This is a Dynamite Network podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Dynamic Duel podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, after taking a quick detour into the Mortal Kombat vs. Street Fighter realm, we're coming back to Marvel vs. DC and finding out who would win in a fight between the rodent-themed characters of Ratcatcher and Squirrel Girl. And I should note right off the bat that her name is the unbeatable Squirrel Girl. So, Jonathan, if you think you're winning this episode, you're going to get beat.
Wait, you mean like in real life or in the match?
I mean in real life.
Oh, no!
For having such a bad opinion.
Wow. Yeah, Ratcatcher is probably most famous for being in the Suicide Squad film, directed by James Gunn. But in the comics, the character actually hasn't been around that long. Like, he doesn't have too many appearances.
Same with Squirrel Girl, actually. She debuted in the 90s and then had a few appearances, didn't appear for like 10 years until Great Lakes Avengers, and then really came to the forefront in the recent Marvel Rivals video game. So we're going to get all into her history and Ratcatcher's history later on this episode. But before that, we're going to break down the latest comic book movie news to come out this past week, of which we got two news items. First one being the Superman sneak peek, and the other one being the new title reveal for the Spider-Man 4 film.
Yeah, both of these news items came out of CinemaCon, which is like Comic-Con, but for movies.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic. You guys, our artificially intelligent duel simulator, AJ9K, has a quick message for our listeners, so listen up.
Why, hello there. Do you want even more from this podcast? Then become a part of the Dynamic Duel community on Patreon, where you can choose from 3 tiers. The Dynamic 2.0 tier gives you access to our Discord chat server, the Fantastic 4 tier gives you 2 bonus episodes each month, and the X-Force tier makes you an executive producer of this show. Lastly, the Dynamite Podcast Network tier lets you create your own podcast using this Monte Carlo simulator. Johnny and Joe will help you develop your show, provide graphic support and consultation, and get you simulation results. Pitch the twins your ideas via email at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. Check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. Pip pip cheerio.
Thanks, AJ9K, and thanks to everyone who supports the podcast.
Be sure to tune into the other shows and the Dynamite Podcast Network this week, including the Console Combat Podcast, where hosts John and Dean simulate battles between popular video game characters. In yesterday's episode, they speculated who would win in a fight between Little Mac from Punch-Out against Balrog from Street Fighter. It was a boxing episode.
And over on the Max Destruction podcast, hosts Scotty and Gilly pit your favorite action heroes from film and television against each other. This Wednesday, the twins are carrying on the Street Fighter theme by reviewing the 1994 film Street Fighter the Movie.
And on the Senjo World podcast, host Zachary Hepburn speculates on fights between fan-favorite anime and manga characters. On Thursday, Zach's going to reveal who would win in a fight between Dante from Devil May Cry versus Vash the Stampede from Trigun.
Visit dynamicpodcasts.com or click the link in our show notes to listen to all of the shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network.
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. A No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award we post on Instagram for the person that we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week.
Last week, we asked you guys, which character not announced for Avengers Doomsday would you most like to have seen and why? And of course, this is coming off of the cast reveal for Avengers Doomsday that came out a few weeks ago. We got a few answers, just 3 it looks like, so we have 2 honorable mentions and 1 no prize winner.
Our first honorable mention goes to Mike Williams, who said,
"Hi guys, Mike Williams here, St. Louis. The person that was not announced I would have liked to see was Michael Fassbender, the younger Magneto. I can't see Dr. Doom pulling off all this mayhem against all these heroes without a little help. And then maybe the younger Magneto turn on him at the end of the movie. As always, make mine Marvel. Take care."
Yeah, we got to reveal that some of the X-Men characters from the original Fox franchise are going to be in Avengers Doomsday. including Patrick Stewart as Professor X, Ian McKellen as Magneto, James Marsden as Cyclops, etc. We did not receive word that any of the new cast of characters from the rebooted timeline, starting with X-Men First Class, is going to show up. So characters like James McAvoy's Professor X or Michael Fassbender's Magneto are not going to appear. Possibly. Allegedly. We'll see if they end up showing up on the cast list. But those actors will be sorely missed, especially Michael Fassbender as Magneto, who really came to define the character on his own apart from Ian McKellen's version.
Yeah, what duo did it better? Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, or James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender?
I can't choose. They were both great.
Gun to your head, gun to your balls.
I guess I would go with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, just because I think they brought just as much gravitas to their roles as the elder actors, but they brought this cool factor that wasn't quite as prevalent. That's probably blasphemy. I don't feel good about that answer. It's a fucked up question.
Yeah, I mean, you gave the wrong answer, too, because there really is no right answer to that question.
Right. Great answer, Mike Williams. Our next honorable mention goes to Travis Bailey, who said,
Travis from that town. What's up, good twin? All right, so we spoke about it. Give me Haley Stansfield, Spider-Gwen. I know if it's Dove Cameron, I can see the vision there. I'm cool with that. I see the vision. Or give me Dallas Dupree Young from Cobra Kai as Miles Morales. Now there, you got something there. He laying hands on cats like he a reverend, like he under the revival tent, man. Because we don't have that iconic Spider-Man fighting scene like we got from Daredevil and Batman.
Yeah, Travis gave two answers here. He said either Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy. Of course, she voices the character of Gwen Stacy in the Spider-Verse animated films, or Dallas Dupree Young as Miles Morales. And yeah, I agree with both of those answers. Haley Steinfeld, I think, is a little bit older than Dallas Dupree Young. And, you know, of course, Dallas doesn't voice Miles in the Spider-Verse films. That's Shameik Moore. I also think he would be a great Miles Morales. But I think you do want to cast pretty dang young, like teenager aged, for Miles and Spider-Gwen if they were to show up.
Yeah, honestly, if you could get Haley Steinfeld to cameo as Gwen Stacy and Shameik Moore to cameo as Miles Morales, that would be perfection. But Dallas Dupree Young as Miles Morales is something I'd never considered. I think if you're going to get him as Miles Morales, though, you shouldn't do Haley Steinfeld as Gwen Stacy. You should cast another Cobra Kai actress, maybe Peyton List, to be her, because I think she would be great in that role as well.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. But I'm also hoping that they save the Spider-Verse characters for the Spider-Man films. Great answer, Travis, but the winner of this week's No Prize is Gil Camacho, who said,
Hey guys, Gilly Macho here. You know, all jokes aside, my answer would have been Mark Ruffalo, but I think we should give that guy a break. So my answer is going to be Edward Norton, Bruce Banner, aka the Hulk. I think we need a more serious, more savage version of the Hulk, and he could be a variant of Bruce Banner. And I think I would get a kick out of him interacting with the Thing. So that's my answer, Edward Norton.
Yeah, it was a huge disappointment that the Hulk was not mentioned as one of the cast members for the upcoming Avengers Doomsday film. It seems more like the character is going to be saved for the sequel, Avengers Secret Wars. That being said, considering we're getting like all of the old Fox X-Men characters in Doomsday, it would also be interesting to see how a variant of Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner, Edward Norton, would interact with everybody else if he were to show up in Avengers Doomsday. And it would be even more interesting if Mark Ruffalo actually was in the film and we got to see his Bruce Banner's interaction with Edward Norton's Bruce Banner, and also maybe get some interaction between, you know, the Thing and one of the Hulks. I just think there's a lot of potential to kind of get some closure with the character of Edward Norton's Bruce Banner if he were included in this film.
Well, I mean, technically, Edward Norton is not a variant, though, but it would be cool if this film cleared that up. And bring back Terrence Howard as well.
Yeah, just everybody who was recast in any of these films, just have them show up in Avengers Doomsday as variants, and then we could just, you know, all understand how the recasting happens in continuity and stuff like that. Although I guess you couldn't do that with William Hurt.
Just CGI him. Just do it with Princess Leia.
Yeah, that'll work. But no, I love this answer. I think if you guys listen to our review of The Incredible Hulk, you're aware of just how big a fan I was of Edward Norton as Bruce Banner. It's kind of a shame that, you know, he wasn't able to retain the role, but I'm, you know, still really glad that we got Mark Ruffalo as the character now. It would just be nice for him to actually show up in this movie.
Great answer, Gilly. You win this week's No Prize. If you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own No Prize, Stay tuned to later on in this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week.
And now that that's done,
on to the news! Okay, last week during CinemaCon, the Warner Brothers panel unveiled what they're calling a sneak peek. It's really an extended trailer of Superman. There's not too much new footage from the previous trailer, except for an extended opening involving Krypto and Superman by the Fortress of Solitude. Now, this was initially only supposed to be played in theaters as a theatrical exclusive for anyone who went to go see the Minecraft movie. You know, CinemaCon is for movies, but it's specifically for theaters. Like, theaters go there and see what new films the studios are going to bring out. So I'm not surprised that Warner Brothers was trying to throw theaters a bone by not releasing this online. That said, it eventually was. Rumors are because it was leaked, but I don't remember seeing it leaked anywhere. Thank goodness they did release this online, though, because I am not interested in the Minecraft movie. I know people like that. Never played it as a kid. Kind of was too old to play it by the time it became popular. But yeah, I'm glad I got to see this trailer.
Yeah, but did it really drum up any hype for the Superman film that wasn't already there?
Probably not, I'll be honest. In fact, it probably hurt the film because there's been a lot of criticism, specifically regarding Krypto. Now, when the trailer starts off, Superman, of course, lands near the North Pole, as he did in the previous trailer, and he whistles for Krypto, who comes and immediately just starts jumping all over him, just like a really bad dog. And the first time I saw this trailer, I was like, what the heck? Is Krypto really hurting Superman that much? Like, is Krypto stronger than Superman? I was just confused. But after watching it like 50 times, I was like, okay, Superman's hurt. His dog's being a bad dog and just jumping all over him. It didn't bother me as much.
No, it didn't bother me the first time I saw it either. I just figured that it was a scene that's being played for laughs, which was a little bit strange to me because seeing the shot of Superman in the snow injured like that seemed very serious in its tone from the first trailer. And then we see that the tone is actually more comedic when Krypto shows up and then starts essentially beating the shit out of Superman. So we're having this tonal disparity that's something more akin to a Marvel film, I think, than anything we've seen come out of DC, with Peacemaker and the Suicide Squad accepted.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out if this would be considered bathos or...
Sure, of course it would.
Maybe, because I think one of the big recurring themes of the movie is how bad of a dog Krypto is. So maybe not. I'm not sure.
I mean, that being said, I don't mind Krypto being portrayed as like this problem dog because I think it's endearing. You know, I think most people who have had a dog who needed to undergo training or just had some behavioral issues knows where this is coming from and can kind of relate to it and find it endearing and stuff like that. And I think it'll be an interesting story element to explore for Superman dealing with this all-powerful dog, basically. I don't think that's going to be the main plot of the movie, but I think it's an interesting subplot. I was confused, though, as to the state of Krypto's training, because on one hand, you have him jumping all over Superman, wanting to play with him and, injuring him. And then on the other hand, you have him actually listening to Superman and carrying him directly to the Fortress of Solitude. So, does he obey orders or does he not obey orders? Make up your mind.
I think he was just really excited to see his owner. But then when he realized that, oh, hey, things are pretty serious, I should probably listen to him. That's the vibe that I got.
Okay, so he is trained then.
Ish? Probably not well.
Okay. Don't make him a service dog is what you're saying.
Definitely not. Now, Krypto drags Superman to the Fortress of Solitude, which, holy shit, was incredible. The whole opening scene that we have here for this trailer looks gorgeous. That was not expected for how cool the Fortress of Solitude was going to look in this film.
It's by far the best realized version of the Fortress of Solitude that I think I've ever seen. The cinematography of this movie, I think, is going to be incredible.
I mean, based off these trailers, yeah, it's going to look phenomenal. I also love the fact that the fortress is able to hide itself because, considering we have Google Maps and satellite technology, it would not be difficult for people in the governments to spot Superman's fortress. So the fact that it's able to grow out of the ground, I thought was fascinating. The robots were a surprise, kinda. It was a surprise that there were so many of them. And one of them was voiced by friggin' Alan Tudyk, who's apparently doing like all the voice roles in the DC universe. He also does Dr. Phosphorus. He did Clayface. It's like, holy cow, how many more are you going to do?
The design of the robots struck me as particularly odd because they were kind of retro-futuristic, which concerns me because we know that the entire style of the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out just 2 weeks after Superman is also retro-futuristic. So I'm concerned that the two films are going to have a very similar aesthetic that I think audiences aren't going to appreciate them being so similar.
I did not even think about that, but that is completely valid. I'm just glad that Superman comes out first.
I mean, the design of Kirby is different from these Kryptonian robots, but I would say that they have the same style.
Yeah, and actually, now that you mention it, the cinematography of both films is not too far off either.
Right.
Like the color palette is kind of similar. The one thing that threw me off the most in this trailer, even more than Krypto's behavior, was the sunlight magnification tool that the robots used to heal Superman from his injuries. I've never seen Superman react that way to sunlight. It almost seemed like he was in pain. I was like, stop it, you're killing him. It was just bizarre. And some people on Discord were saying that maybe it was like a pleasure reaction, just like pleasure overload, to which I'm like, yeah.
I said that actually. But no, I think he's having a reaction to the intense accelerated healing process. You know, it's painful, even though he's being healed.
What did you think of the robot's humor, by the way?
There wasn't much humor there. Like, one of them was like, don't thank us, we won't appreciate it. And then the girl robot was like, he looked at me, hee hee.
Isn't that contradictory? Like, do they have emotions or don't they?
That's a great question. I have no idea. Are you concerned about the writing and the tone of this movie based off of this extended sneak peek?
The tone is jarring, I'm not going to lie. This is a very different tone from what we've been used to with the character of Superman. That said, I'm not really concerned about the writing because I know James Gunn is a good writer. He's a really good writer, actually. I'm just not sure how to take some of these comedic beats out of context.
Well, I guess we'll see how the film turns out when it comes out in just a few months.
That's right. The film is coming out July 11th. Hopefully, we get a new trailer before then and not just this extended one of the previous trailer that we got.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a new trailer soon, and I think it needs to be fucking incredible because I think a lot of people are on the fence about this movie, and they just need to be wowed. They need to be convinced. So James Gunn better pull out all the stops on this next trailer.
100%. I want to know who the villain is. I want to know what the stakes are. Visually, it just needs to be breathtaking, which I'm not too worried about. But yeah, it's got to be good. Maybe less Krypto? I don't know. It depends on how lovable you can make him. But speaking of Krypto, that brings us to our question of the week. What do you think of Krypto the Superdog from the Superman sneak peek?
Yeah, did you love him? Did you hate him? Did you think he was funny? Did you relate to that dog in some way from personal experience with your own pets? Let us know. Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message could be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and award that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to Instagram. Be sure to answer before April 12th. In Marvel news, coming out of CinemaCon, we got the title for the upcoming Spider-Man 4 film, which was revealed to be Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, the previous trilogy of Spider-Man films all included home in the title for some reason. None of those movies were named after a comic book arc or anything like that. You know, you had Homecoming, you had Far From Home, and you had No Way Home. I'm really glad to move on from those. I think if you've listened to this podcast for a while, you'll know that Jonathan and I didn't love any of the home titles. I'm really glad to see them now referencing the comic books with their subtitle, Brand New Day. Of course, those who read the comics will recognize this as a Dan Slott run back in the early 2010s that came after the One More Day story arc, where basically Peter Parker's marriage and life was erased from reality, and he was rebooted kind of in that he was no longer married to Mary Jane, and he was living with Aunt May again, kind of down on his luck. The One More Day arc really brought the character back to basics and introduced some pretty cool characters like Mr. Negative and Anti-Venom, and paved the way for future great stories like the Superior Spider-Man. Will any of that be addressed within this film? I don't know, but I like the idea of Spider-Man kind of starting fresh with this new Spider-Man 4 film, especially considering how the No Way Home film ended.
Now, Brand New Day has nothing to do with the multiverse, correct?
Correct.
Because rumors are that Brand New Day, taking place between Doomsday and Secret Wars, is going to heavily involve the multiverse. So I'm wondering how they're going to adapt that storyline, if they are at all, for a multiversal entry.
That's a good question. I don't think they're actually going to adapt anything from the comic books regarding the Brand New Day arc. What I really want to see, and I think what a lot of fans want to see, are either a Spider-Man versus Venom storyline with Eddie Brock, or like a Spider-Verse movie where they introduce Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. Marvel has, borrowed arc titles from the books and not adapted them one for one. Look at things like Thor Ragnarok or even Civil War, which had the same premise as the arc in the books, but the execution was entirely different.
That's fair. Like Secret Invasion, even.
Exactly. Yeah, that was too different, if you ask me. But I think, this title gives Spider-Man fans a lot to look forward to. I think at least a lot to hope for. And, the Spider-Man franchise has always been good ever since the production of them was taken over by Marvel Studios. So, yeah, lots to look forward to, especially considering, again, that it's being directed by Dustyn Daniel Cretton, of course, who helmed the Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings film.
Yeah, I'm still sad that he's not moving forward with the Shang-Chi sequel, but he's definitely deserving of directing a Spider-Man film.
But that does it for all the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and move into our main event where we find out who would win in a fight between DC's Ratcatcher and Marvel's Squirrel Girl. All right, Ratcatcher versus Squirrel Girl. These are two fairly well-known characters, I think. They both have rodent-based powers in that they can each control the animals of their namesake. Ratcatcher controls rats. Squirrel Girl controls squirrels.
There's really not too much more to it than that. Now, we have actually had the idea for this duel for quite some time, and I'm actually pretty excited to finally be getting around to it because I am aware of Squirrel Girl's legend, and I will be glad to knock her down a peg because I'm just going to say it, I think she's overhyped.
Because she beat people like Dr. Doom?
Exactly. What? Like, there's no way she's that powerful.
Apparently she is. For people who may be unaware of the character, Squirrel Girl is notorious for being one of the more ridiculously themed heroes who just so happened to defeat Dr. Doom in canon in the comic books by basically overwhelming him with a vast legion of squirrels. It's pretty ridiculous to say the least, but the character does have her charms. She's kind of a gag character, though, in just the people that she's been able to beat in the comic books, which also includes Thanos and Galactus. It's pretty funny. If you go onto the official Marvel Power Grid on the Marvel.com website and look at her stats, she's actually maxed out at 7s across the board. So I think you have a hard time ahead of you, Jonathan.
There's no way she's going to be maxed out on all of her stats. That's dumb. Now, Squirrel Girl has not appeared in a film like Ratcatcher has, although in the Suicide Squad film, there's actually Ratcatcher's daughter who kind of took up his mantle. But Squirrel Girl was almost in a television series played by Milana Vaintrub. And I'm actually kind of sad that that show never came out because I thought she would have been great for that role.
Oh, she's a perfect Squirrel Girl. But she did get to voice the character of Squirrel Girl in several of the Marvel Rising cartoon movies.
Oh, I didn't know that. I'm glad Kevin Feige threw her a bone after the show was canceled.
Oh, for sure. And of course, Ratcatcher was played by Daniela Melchior in the Suicide Squad film, who, as you said, was the daughter of the original Ratcatcher, who was played by Taika Waititi. Can't wait to find out who will win. But to explain the methodology behind our duels, let's go to our sentient duel simulator, Alfred Jarvis 9000. AJ and IK, tell our listeners how you go about determining a winner in our duel matchups.
Yes, of course, sir. The way I determine a winner between the contestants is by running 1,000 Monte Carlo simulations using the character's statistics. A Monte Carlo simulation is a probabilistic model used to determine outcomes through random sampling. In this case, I randomize the statistics along a normal distribution as a way to simulate the many variables that can occur during battle. The stat parameters are based on the official Marvel Power Grid, from which the DC character's statistics are extrapolated. Additional stat categories are included such as range, damage potential, versatility, and perception in order to create a more detailed and accurate simulation. The results of the 1,000 simulations provide a percentage of wins for each character. The contestant with the higher percentage is declared the victor, as they have a higher probability to win any given battle. In an equitable pairing, neither character should win 100% of the matches. The comic book stories have shown that there's even a way for Batman to defeat Superman, so the confidence rate of my method falls in line with the precedents that have been established in the source material. My mathematical simulations are without subjectivity or bias. Feats are not the sole consideration, nor are fan votes tabulated for determination of the winner.
Thanks, AJ9K. Before we run the simulations, though, we like to break down each character's histories and abilities before improvising a scenario on how we imagine one of the 1,000 simulations would play out, beat for beat. And I believe it's my turn to go first with the DC character's backstory, so let me tell you all about Ratcatcher. Born and raised in Gotham City, Otis Flanagan worked as a municipal exterminator for the Gotham City Sanitation Department. As a Ratcatcher, he developed an uncanny connection with vermin, frequently claiming he could train them to respond to his commands. Those who worked with him dismissed the claim as delusional, pointing to his solitary demeanor and increasingly erratic behavior. Viewed as eccentric and untrustworthy, Otis's reputation deteriorated further after he was arrested for stabbing and killing a man during a street fight. Convicted of manslaughter, he was sentenced to 10 years in Blackgate Penitentiary. During his incarceration, Otis became increasingly bitter and reclusive. Feeling betrayed by the very city he had spent his life serving, he reevaluated his role in Gotham's ecosystem. In his eyes, the true infestation was not the rats he once exterminated, but the citizens and officials who had turned against him. Embracing the company of rodents, he began forming a bond with the prison's vermin population, feeding them, studying them, training them, and eventually commanding them. His affinity for rats grew into an obsession. Where others saw filth, Otis saw loyalty. He came to believe the rats, like himself, were misunderstood and mistreated. When he was released for good behavior, Otis adopted a new identity, Ratcatcher. Returning to Gotham, Otis sought revenge on the 4 officials who had played key roles in his conviction. One by one, he abducted them, luring or ambushing each one into the city's underground sewer system, which he now called home. With his deep knowledge of the subterranean tunnels, he eluded law enforcement and concealed his victims in a hidden underground lair. There, aided by an ever-growing swarm of rats, he subjected the officials to years of psychological and physical torment. Bound in darkness, the prisoners endured the constant gnawing presence of vermin, while Otis preached to them about his vision of a future where rats inherited the earth. His captives remained hidden for 5 years, presumed dead, while Otis refined his control over rats using whistles, high-frequency tones, and other methods of animal training. Eventually, one of Otis's prisoners, Judge Wyatt Hogan, managed to successfully escape captivity and nearly made it to the surface until he was killed by a swarm of rats. His body was found by Batman, however, who followed the trail of vermin back through the sewers. The Dark Knight confronted Ratcatcher in his lair, quickly dispersing the rats with ultrasonic emitters before defeating Otis and delivering him to the authorities. While incarcerated once more, Otis used his abilities to build a reputation inside of Blackgate. With rats acting as messengers and couriers, he developed a barter system among inmates, smuggling contraband through ventilation ducts and sewer lines. His network proved invaluable to other criminals, including Bane, who used Ratcatcher's rodent couriers to help him orchestrate an escape. Despite being locked away, Otis's influence spread across the prison. The vermin he trained became his eyes and ears throughout Blackgate, allowing him to communicate with allies and track prison movement unnoticed. He later escaped during a parole hearing, using a flute he had secretly carved to emit high-pitched frequencies that summoned rats. Overrunning the courtroom with rodents, he fled back to the depths of Gotham's sewers, where he attempted to orchestrate a scheme to take over the city with rats, but his plan was stopped by Nightwing, who at the time was temporarily operating as Batman, and Otis was sent to prison once again. You can learn more about Nightwing in his duel against Daredevil. When a devastating earthquake struck Gotham, turning it into a no-man's land, Ratcatcher was among the many inmates who escaped the ruined prison. He resurfaced briefly, joining a group of villains attempting to exploit the city's chaos, but was recaptured shortly afterward. The Though his role in the criminal underworld was often secondary, his knowledge of the city's subterranean network made him a recurring nuisance for authorities and an asset to fellow rogues. In the wake of Gotham's reconstruction, Otis took refuge among the city's homeless population. Sympathetic to his cause, some of Gotham's vagrants saw Ratcatcher as a kind of folk figure, an enemy of the elite who lived among society's forgotten. He was eventually discovered by authorities and confronted by police. One of the homeless individuals who attempted to protect him was secretly an OMAC sleeper agent. When the man was struck by police, the OMAC programming activated and identified Ratcatcher as a Gamma-level threat. Before Otis could escape, he was vaporized on the spot. In post-Flashpoint continuity, Otis was presumed dead until he was once again seen navigating the city's sewers and subterranean ruins, where he resumed his criminal activities and was discovered working alongside Menace, a known adversary of Batwing, who you can learn more about in our Batwing vs. Miles Morales episode. Otis's skills brought him into contact with a wide range of Gotham's criminal underworld. At one point, he aligned himself with the Gotham vigilante Mother Panic, operating not as an enemy, but as a reluctant ally. Eventually returning to crime, however, Otis clashed with Batman again after being tracked to a sewer base, fortified by tunnels, booby traps, and swarms of defensive vermin, though Batman was able to overcome all of Otis's obstacles and capture him once again. Now, powers-wise, Ratcatcher has no superhuman abilities outside of his talent to train and control rats, seemingly via a staff and lantern that he carries. He uses the rats to attack enemies in swarms, send messages, and smuggle contraband. Ratcatcher also uses a gas gun and gas grenades capable of emitting cyanide or other noxious chemicals, which he's protected from thanks to his gas mask. And that's Ratcatcher.
Okay, so he does employ some gadgets in addition to the rats that he controls.
Yes.
Well, he's going to need them because Squirrel Girl is about to eat some nuts and kick some butts. Let me tell you about her backstory. Doreen Green was born in Canada to Dorian and Maureen Green. A genetic modification of unknown origin granted her squirrel-like traits, which began to manifest when she was 10 years old. These included a large, semi-prehensile tail and the ability to communicate with squirrels. After rescuing a squirrel from a dog, she befriended it and named it Monkey Joe. The two became partners, and Monkey Joe encouraged Doreen to use her powers to help people. Although Doreen initially believed she was a mutant, a doctor confirmed otherwise. At age 14, Doreen adopted the alias Squirrel Girl and ambushed Iron Man in a forest near Stark Enterprises, hoping to prove herself as a worthy sidekick. Iron Man declined, but when Dr. Doom appeared and captured him, Doreen summoned a horde of squirrels, including Monkey Joe, to overwhelm Doom's ship and free Iron Man. The squirrels disabled Doom's systems and forced him to flee, marking Doreen's first major victory. Following this, she continued to train and hone her skills. Around her 15th birthday, she aided the Hulk in a fight against the Abomination, directing the blinded Hulk while her squirrels helped subdue the enemy. Later, Doreen relocated to New York City and began fighting crime in Central Park, where she saved the Great Lakes Avengers, Flatman and Doorman, from muggers. Impressed, they invited her and Monkey Joe to join the team. As a member of the Great Lakes Avengers, Doreen battled threats like Batroc's brigade and witnessed the death of the team's newest member, Grasshopper. Tragedy struck again when Monkey Joe was killed by Leather Boy, a rejected member of the team disguised as Dr. Doom.
No!
After mourning her squirrel's loss, Doreen helped the team defeat Maelstrom with an army of squirrels, of which only one survived. She named the survivor Tippy Toe, who became her new companion and remained at her side moving forward. During this period, Doreen and Tippy Toe independently defeated MODOK, Terex, and even Thanos. Of course off-panel, but his defeat was verified by Uatu the Watcher. Despite being offered a position by S.H.I.E.L.D., Doreen declined, preferring to stay with the Great Lakes Avengers. She later joined the Thing in a battle against Bybeast in Central Park, after which she and the team attended a superhero poker tournament. There, Flatman won with a straight flush, and the group adopted the name Great Lakes Champions. When the Superhuman Registration Act went into effect, the team registered and joined the initiative as Wisconsin's official superhero team. During this period, Deadpool mistakenly attacked them under the belief they were unregistered, and Doreen defeated Deadpool with ease. Squirrel Girl later helped rescue the god Dionysus from Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM for short, returning him to Olympus after their victory. Around this time, she revealed her admiration for the New Warriors, especially Speedball, who you can learn more about in his duel against Wally West the Flash. After Speedball's transformation into the guilt-ridden vigilante Penance, Doreen attempted to change his fate by using a time machine borrowed from Dr. Doom. Instead, she traveled to the year 2099, where she met alternate versions of Speedball and Mr. Immortal, though she was convinced by him to return to her own time. During the alien Skrull secret invasion of Earth, the team discovered a Skrull posing as their newest recruit. After the initiative reorganized under Norman Osborn, Doreen left the group after defeating Fin Fang Foom on her own and returned to New York. You can learn more about Fin Fang Foom in his duel against Starro the Conqueror. In New York, Doreen became the nanny for Danielle Cage, who was the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones. She cared for the child through several crises, including the attacks from the Thule Society, the Revengers, and the organization Hammer. She remained with the family even after they departed the Avengers, continuing to protect Danielle. You can learn more about Luke Cage and Jessica Jones in their respective duels against Thunder and Huntress. After leaving the Cages, Doreen enrolled at Empire State University to study computer science. On her first day, she met Nancy Whitehead, who would become her best friend. She also confronted Kraven the Hunter and persuaded him to redirect his energy toward hunting sea monsters instead of squirrels. Not long after, Doreen intercepted Galactus en route to Earth. Wearing Iron Man's armor, she traveled to the moon and persuaded the cosmic being to feed on a different planet rich in nuts. This encounter ended peacefully, and Galactus left Earth unharmed. You can learn more about Galactus in his duel against the Spectre, and more about Kraven in his duel against Vixen. Upon Doreen's return, Nancy revealed that she had figured out Squirrel Girl's secret identity, but promised to keep it a secret, and the two formed a close friendship. Doreen also met Chipmunk Hunk and Koi Boy, fellow students with animal-based powers. Together with Tippy Toe, the group battled threats like Mysterion and the Asgardian squirrel god Ratatosker with aid from Loki and Thor. Doreen and Nancy also rehabilitated the villain Brain Drain, updating his outdated systems and encouraging him to pursue education at Empire State University. Although romance wasn't a major focus for Squirrel Girl, Doreen's interest in Chipmunk Hunk was complicated when he began dating someone else. Encouraged by her friends to try online dating, she endured a series of unsuccessful experiences. Mole Man, angered by her earlier interference in his domain, began demanding her attention. After a confrontation including Tricephalus, who was in love with Mole Man, Doreen allowed herself to be defeated to end his pursuit, and she stepped away from dating. A separate version of Doreen, created through a cloning device, became her antagonist. The clone, Aline, lacked Doreen's empathy and sought to build a squirrel-dominated utopia. She imprisoned heroes in the Negative Zone, a hostile alternate dimension, and banished Doreen to the moon. There, Doreen summoned Mjolnir and became Squirrel Thor. After liberating the heroes, Doreen made one last appeal to Aline's humanity. Aline willingly stayed behind and reshaped the Negative Zone into Squirreltopia 5000, the society that she had envisioned. Doreen and her friends later visited there with mutual respect. During Doreen's second year at ESU, she joined the US Avengers. She also encountered Melissa Morbeck, a villain who posed as a benefactor for the Avengers and gifted Squirrel Girl a flying squirrel suit. Morbeck later used technology to control animals and attacked the city, but Doreen and her allies defeated her with the help of Nancy and Mary, who disabled the controlled tech. Later, Loki summoned Doreen to help repel a frost giant invasion of North America. She reunited with Ratatosker, and together they sparked a political revolution in Jotunheim that forced the giants to retreat. Soon after, Morbeck returned with an alliance of villains, including Dr. Doom, MODOK Superior, and Leader, to exact revenge. She leaked Doreen's identity to the public and attacked her apartment using stolen Iron Man armor. In the final confrontation, several former foes turned allies, including Kraven, Mole Man, and the godlike entity Galactus, came to Doreen's defense. Galactus teleported the villains away and restored Stark's armor, while Iron Man publicly honored Doreen's achievements. Following these events, Doreen retired from superheroics and launched the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl radio show, an AM radio call-in program where she answered questions about being a hero. Her co-hosts included Tippy Toe, Nancy, Koi Boy, Chipmunk Hunk, and Brain Drain. And that's her backstory. Powers-wise, Squirrel Girl has the enhanced proportionate physicality of a squirrel. This grants her increased strength, able to lift around 10 tons, increased durability, and increased reflexes and leaping distance. She has a 3-foot-long bushy tail and small claws on her hands and feet that help her climb. Her front incisor teeth are abnormally large like a rodent's, giving her superior biting strength. In addition, Squirrel Girl has a small knuckle spike she can retract from the back of each hand that is sharp enough to carve into wood. She is fluent in squirrel chatter, which she can use to speak with and command vast legions of squirrels, either to assist her in battle, serve as a distraction, or chew through electronic components. However, Squirrel Girl's most valuable skill is the ability to reason, negotiate, and draw empathy from others through verbal communication, which has allowed her to most commonly defeat villains through reasoning rather than physical confrontation. She also has a utility belt with pouches that she calls her nut sacks, which she uses to carry a variety of nuts as snacks for herself and her squirrel friends.
Wow!
And that's Squirrel Girl.
She is the most frustrating character for me as a hater of all things Marvel, because she's a joke. And it's ridiculous the feats she's been able to accomplish, like defeating Thanos and Galactus as well. What?
Is Squirrel Girl a joke, or is it your face?
We're twins.
Yeah, but we don't look that similar.
We're identical twins.
In a world where fantasies collide and heroes clash, one podcast network rises above the rest. Prepare yourself for the ultimate showdowns in comic books, video games, movies, and anime. The Dynamite Podcast Network presents Console Combat, where video game legends brawl every Monday. Dynamic Duel, where comic book titans smash every Tuesday. Max Destruction, where TV and action heroes battle every Wednesday. And Sendro World, where anime champions clash every Thursday. Join us as we speculate on the matches and, armed with the power of mathematical simulations, discover who will emerge victorious. Visit dynamicpodcast.com, where we settle the debate and settle the score.
Now that we got their histories and abilities out of the way, let's speculate on how one of the 1,000 simulated matches will go. The winner's determined by simulations, not the speculation, but it's fun to imagine how the fight could play out. AJ9K, what are the rules of our speculation?
Well, I should say there are no rules, other than the characters have no prior knowledge of the other going into the fight. All they are aware of starting out is that the other character is a threat that needs to be eliminated. For the speculation, the contestants will begin approximately 50 meters apart in a nondescript environment that will have no bearing on the match itself, as no environmental statistics are considered in my simulations. The contestants must earn victory on their own merit.
All right then, let's get into it. Ratcatcher and Squirrel Girl meet on the battlefield. Who goes first? I'm going to say that since there are way more rats on the planet than there are squirrels, that Ratcatcher is going to go first, because just of how more accessible rats would be to summon for him. And so he's going to start by sending a swarm, or rather a mischief, of rats to attack Squirrel Girl.
A group of rats is called a mischief?
Yep.
Okay, I learned something today. I don't know what a group of squirrels is called. One sec. Okay, they're called a scurry.
Huh.
So, Squirrel Girl sees Ratcatcher summon this rat army, and she's like, okay, you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts. Squirrel Stampede! And she summons this scurry of squirrels to match the size of Ratcatcher's rat army.
Okay, these rats are way meaner than squirrels, though. We're talking like roided out New York City subway pizza rats here. They will fuck these squirrels up. And that's what they're going to do. Just zooming in on this mini battle, we're going to see squirrels getting slashed open, limbs gnawed off, eyeballs tail whipped right out of their sockets. It's going to be a scene like right out of Watership Down, just squirrel carnage everywhere.
Oh, man. Okay, first of all, you're a sick bastard. Second of all, rats are mean and big or whatever, but squirrels are way more agile than these fat-ass rats. So, maybe a few squirrels go down, but a majority of them are going to leap over the rats, including Squirrel Girl. She and the squirrels are going to, long jump over the rat army over to where Ratcatcher is. And she's going to break the staff and the lantern that he uses to control the rats with some well-executed knuckle spike punches.
She punches the staff?
Yeah, with her knuckle spike. It breaks it. And the lantern.
Okay, I mean, he doesn't actually need those things to direct rats. I think he just uses the lantern to see in the sewers. He could verbally command them. But now that Squirrel Girl is in close, Ratcatcher is just going to point blank blast her right in the face with the cyanide capsule from his gas gun. And she's going to breathe that in and die.
No, she doesn't breathe in the cyanide gas because she immediately covers her face with her long bushy tail. And it functions as like a gas mask of sorts. At least long enough for some squirrels to bite through the firing mechanism on Ratcatcher's gas gun and just render it completely useless. And actually, they also chew off his trigger finger, too.
Jeez.
And then Squirrel Girl is going to use her tail to fan the gas away from her.
Okay, well, I'm going to say, surprise, there were actually rats hiding in Squirrel Girl's tail. So when she uses it to cover her face, she already has like a rat chewing on her nose. And as she's using her tail to fan the gas away, she's also just flinging more rats onto herself. And they all begin to chew through her, I guess.
Yeah, okay. Well, Squirrel Girl stops these rats from chewing through her by summoning a suit of squirrel armor. You know, she has all her furry friends come over and cover and protect her body, and these squirrels are going to repel the rats that are crawling on her. And then Squirrel Girl points her arm at Ratcatcher, and kind of like one of Iron Man's repulsor blasts, she's going to fire a squirrel pulsar blast from her squirrel armor, which is just really just sending a bunch of squirrels right at Ratcatcher, right at his nuts, and these squirrels straight up castrate him. She's like, get those nuts!
Okay, well, to get the squirrels away from him right away, Ratcatcher, he's going to slam down a gas grenade right at his feet, and the squirrels, they're just going to fall off of him. And that's when he's going to unleash this barrage of rat traps that are going to land on Squirrel Girl's armor, snapping and killing enough squirrels to expose an opening in her armor that his rats can penetrate and dismantle that armor.
Now, you know it's not real armor, right? It's just a bunch of squirrels on her body that she calls her squirrel armor.
I understand the joke.
Okay, Squirrel Girl loses her squirrel armor then, but then she's going to tell some squirrels to hold their breath, you know, in their little squirrel cheeks in order to avoid Ratcatcher's poison cloud. And they're going to leap over onto Ratcatcher's face and chew through his gas mask, which falls off, and therefore he ends up poisoning himself and dying.
No, because he has a swarm of rats sacrifice themselves to cover and protect him from the poison, and then just shuffle him away, like carrying him through this massive wave of rats that surround Squirrel Girl. And before she realizes it, Ratcatcher is going to reach out from the wave and grab her by the ankles and just pull her right into the rat avalanche. And by the time it dissipates, all that's going to be left of Squirrel Girl is a buck-toothed skeleton. Match over.
Actually, this whole time, Squirrel Girl had her squirrels talking with the rats and convincing them that listening to this Ratcatcher guy isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Like, he's a huge asshole. And the squirrels convince the rats to ignore his commands and attack him instead. So this rat avalanche that you're talking about, that you say devours Squirrel Girl, actually they just devour Ratcatcher instead. And like as Ratcatcher's like, what the hell? And he like cries out in agony, Squirrel Girl's gonna seal the deal by expertly chucking over a couple of acorns into his mouth, and he dies choking on her nuts. Match over.
Of course. I say that these squirrels don't convince the rats of anything because the squirrels have rabies. And they just give the squirrels rabies, so actually the squirrels turn on Squirrel Girl.
Well, let's go ahead and leave the match there. Either the squirrels convince the rats to turn on Ratcatcher, or the rats give the squirrels rabies, causing Squirrel Girl to get devoured by an avalanche of rodents.
That's right.
Let's go ahead and input the character stats, run the simulations, and find out which scenario happens when we come back with a winner.
AG9K, hit it.
Inputting data, running calculations, processing results, simulations complete.
Okay, I did not know going into this match that Squirrel Girl has the proportionate speed and strength and overall physicality of a squirrel.
Well, I didn't know going into this match that Ratcatcher had a gas pellet gun and gas grenades.
Though that didn't really quite help him in the stats. I mean, it gave him the leg up in versatility, but not much else. The only other stat that Ratcatcher came ahead in was intelligence, though they did tie in a few stat categories. We definitely did not max out Squirrel Girl's stats as suggested by the Marvel Power Grid.
No, I mean, like, joke character bullshit aside, we, the podcast, don't consider Squirrel Girl unbeatable. We try to approach her statistics as fairly as possible. That being said, she's quite impressive statistically. She's fast, she's evasive, she's durable, she's strong, she's pretty smart, and she actually has fighting experience, unlike Ratcatcher.
No, he is not a good fighter at all. So taking the stats into account, Joseph, who would you say came out on top in this match?
Obviously, Squirrel Girl. She is the unbeatable Squirrel Girl. That's just how it is. That's reality. And I don't know anybody who would disagree with that. Instagram certainly agrees with me because 73% of our followers sided with Squirrel Girl in this match.
I really, really don't want Squirrel Girl to win, but I'm scared, not gonna lie. Let's see who came out on top. AJ9K, the results, please.
Here you are, sir.
The winner of the matchup between Ratcatcher and Squirrel Girl is Squirrel Girl. By a lot. She won 784 of the 1,000 matches, or 78.4% of the time.
Are you sure that's not 99.9% of the time?
It is not, but it might as well be. Ratcatcher only won 21.6% of his matches, less than a quarter. It's kind of embarrassing.
Is this one of the biggest win spreads that we've ever had on the podcast?
It is.
Does that mean this is a mismatch? Or does it just mean that Squirrel Girl's that fucking awesome?
I will admit to nothing. I don't think this was a mismatch, but I will also not admit that Squirrel Girl is awesome because I have my pride.
Well, I think it stands to reason that if Ratcatcher can single-handedly defeat Starro the Conqueror, as we saw in the Suicide Squad film, and Squirrel Girl beats Ratcatcher, then Squirrel Girl also probably beats Starro the Conqueror. And probably most of DC, if we think about it.
Again, there are way more rats in the world than there are squirrels.
It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And everybody knows that squirrels are better than rats. No one fucking likes rats. Everybody loves squirrels. This match played out exactly how it was supposed to. So DC can see these nuts.
Can we just end this episode already? Gosh! That does it for this duel. AJ9K, close us out.
Thanks for listening to Dynamic Duel. Visit the show's website at dynamicduel.com and follow us on Instagram at Dynamic Duel Podcast. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/dynamicduel and joining a tier that works for you, or by rating and reviewing Dynamic Duel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podchaser, or on our website. Don't forget to listen to the other shows in the Dynamite Podcast Network, including Max Destruction, Senjo World, and Console Combat.
All right, in our next episode, we're going to find out who would win in a fight between Blue Beetle, the Ted Kord version, versus Prowler, the Spider-Man villain / sometimes ally.
Yeah, that should be another interesting one. Two gadgeteers going against each other. Can't wait to see who's going to win. But that does it for this episode. We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers, John Starosky,
Zachary Hepburn,
Dustyn Balcom,
Miggy Matanguihan,
Brandon Estergard,
Nathaniel Wagner,
Levi Yeaton,
Austin Wesolowski,
AJ Dunkerley,
Nick Abanto,
Scott Camacho,
Gil Camacho,
Adam Speas,
Dean Maleski,
Devin Davis,
Joseph Kersting,
Josh Leiner,
Mike Williams,
and Oscar Galvez for helping make this podcast possible. We'll talk to you guys next week. Up and away.
True believers.
I'm more of a kick nuts, eat butts kind of guy.